In today's edition of squeezing as much juice as we can out of these PCs for video content, we're now gonna go ahead and do the overclocking part. Okay, so what we're gonna do today, we're gonna go through each system as a team, because last time when Phil had to do his own and you were like, I don't know what I'm doing, and was like, Jay's mean because he's not helping them. I'll be honest, I'm not the most versed in AMD CPU overclocking. I know usually the best result is to enable PBO and then run a curve optimizer and done, right? That doesn't do anything on Nick's CPU. We've talked about this a million times. Undervolting can help keep the boost clocks up, but you don't get extra boost clock. It's not unlockable. It's a locked CPU because the core is under the cache, which means it gets way too hot. That's why 9000 series, they were inverted. All right, hit F7, we'll go to advanced mode. Your memory is running at 6000, right? Okay, so let's scroll over to the right to AI Tweaker, Turbo Game Mode. Okay, so that doesn't apply to 7800X3D because it's a single CCD. And that's what I hate about quote unquote Turbo Game Mode for AMD in the BIOS. It's so stupid because the idea is, hey, instead of relying on core parking, why don't you just turn off half the CPU if you have a 9900 or 7900 or a 9950 or a 7950X. It's like, just turn off half the CPU you paid for. And unless you come in and disable that, we're gonna keep that off at all times. So at which point, if you bought a dual CCD CPU, you should have just not, because you're turning it off. That's all that does. It sounds like it would be, quote unquote, turboing the CPU higher, but it's not. It's literally only turning off the other half, and it bugs me so much. Precision Boost Overdrive, hit that. Precision Boost Overdrive, go from auto to enabled. Okay, there we go. Thermal limit, let's bump that up. Now here's the thing, you can go to 90. Technically, I think this is an 80 CPU, 80 watt, or 80C CPU, I think, because of the sensitivity of the core. But that's just giving us a new TJ max of 90 right there, which is fine. So hit that. The scaler, the manual is gonna go 200, 2x, that's fine. Clock override, go down from auto to 200, it's enabled positive, and then go down where it says auto. Okay, and then curve optimizer. This is where you can actually gain some, so hit that. And then we're gonna do curve optimizer from auto, it should be per CCD. So do all core, sure. And then we're gonna do, see if it gives us negative. Yeah, negative. And let's start at negative 20, just say 20. So this is reducing the power by 20 millivolts to the core. This, if we're stable, should allow us to have less voltage, which means less temperature, which means longer boost clocks. Not higher boost clocks, but longer boost clocks. Or potentially higher, because it is a scaler, right? So if it gets, the warmer it gets, the lower it could bring the core clock. If we can keep it cooler, we can keep those clocks up for longer. That's about all we're gonna change, except for you need to max out your fan now. Okay, so I just wanna see if it'll do plus 3000. Yes, it will, because the GDDR6 is so, or GDDR7 is so good.
That's crazy.
It's not even 7X, it's just 7. I mean, that's plus 3000. Now that right there would give a huge uplift to Steel Nomad by itself, like just by itself. But what we're gonna do to keep this real is we're going to drop it down to like 2000. Type in 2000, and then we're gonna play with the core now. Do 350. I have a feeling we're gonna crash right here, but. Okay. I don't, see, it's gonna want to go over 3200 right now. What we might deal with is because we're now hitting power limit and voltage limit, the clock might be really set to like 3240 or 3250, but because the power limits aren't letting it get there, it's pulling down the frequency. So what could lead to crashing at this point is a lighter scene might cause an overshoot on frequency, or at least it tries to go to that frequency and then it is unstable. So like right now, if we were to put 400 in there, I'm sure it'll crash. Or not. Jesus Christ, what? Oh, there it goes. But that right there probably tried to go, yeah, see, 3292 is where that frequency is actually set. So let's do like 360. If it crashes, what we'll do is we'll drop it down to like 350. If it crashes again, we'll drop it down to 340. We'll drop 10 if it keeps crashing. So now Phil can sit here and I'm the captain now. Literally, dude, just turn on PBO. Yeah. Make sure the power limits are maxed. 200 megahertz, do a minus 20 on the curve optimizer and just call it a day. So basically Phil just did the same thing we did on Nick's system, but much quicker.
Yeah, I think we can call this for my GPU, right? All right, cool. So GPU is set. I'm gonna save that. Okay, and then.
I have a feeling you're gonna crash in like F1 or something, because I think it's gonna rubber band way up high, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Wow.
You think I should just say 400?
No, I think you should. Where were you? Yeah, I try 450. If it crashes, like I said, we'll drop 10 until it doesn't.
Because it was running fine at 500, so I figured minus 50.
So we're gonna save a lot of time because my shit don't overclock. So
Yeah, your result is cool to save.
but the CPU does. All right.
The system's kind of great.
He's gonna do his thermal paste. We'll be back.
Yep.
So
we found out
yeah.
I didn't mess up the paste. I mean, it was fine. Like Jay looked at the paste pattern and he said it looked fine.
It did. It looked great. But then we noticed you were pulling 140 watts, and it's a 105 watt CPU.
So this motherboard is doing the Asus Intel thing where it's just pushing limits past stock limits.
Without you touching them.
Yeah.
My turn. So I've sort of set the CPU to meltdown mode. So here's what I've done. Asus Advanced OC Profile, XMP1, these are 6400 DIMMs. I just left it there. NPU boost, we're not using NPU for anything. I've removed all limits. I have set per core usage. So I have it set to, if it's using 2 cores, hopefully for gaming, it won't, background tasks can sometimes make other cores throttle up, and that's where it fucks that. But anyway, so I only bumped that 100 megahertz to 5.8. Whoops. I got 5.6 gigahertz all core. 5.7 wasn't stable without going and doing some voltage tuning, and I just don't want to mess with that. I don't have the time for that. I sunked all cores for E-core from 4.6 to 4.9. But it is a big jump. But here is where it matters in Cinebench. So I have ABX related controls. I have a 0 offset for ABX. So it's ABX instructions sometimes because they're such an intensive task, the hard type of math. The CPUs can sometimes go like throttle, or not throttle, but frequency down a little bit in ABX instruction just to save the temperature, headroom, and such. Sometimes it'll go down like 200 megahertz. So I have that set to 0. Internal power CPU management, I had it set to 110. We'll go 115 right now because that's 100C is where the temperature would normally start throttling the CPU. But I had it set to 110. We're gonna go to 115 just from extra headroom. Unlimited power. I left the VCC IO. I left the SoC, although I'm gonna bump that up to 185 just to have a little bit extra input voltage for the SoC. CPU voltage, same thing. We're gonna go 185 on that just to get a little bit extra voltage. DDR is fine. Chipset voltage is fine. Minimum CPU cache ratio. I tried to play with the ring a little, or the ring cache a little bit. That's what we do with the XOC stuff to really bump our score. It wasn't liking me touching that. And I was doing that on Intel 14th gen. I don't know what the nuances are of Core Ultra, so I just left it on auto. That's essentially all I did. That's it. So with that, what we're changing now is I'm going back from 5.7 to 5.6, but I increased the current capability from 100% to 120% on the CPU. I've also put our power cycles from T-Probe and auto to extreme because it says extreme, and that's what we want. All right, screwed around with it enough. Played around with a lot of different fail safes and stuff and really made the CPU mad. It locked itself to 400 megahertz, but we fixed it. So anyway, CPU, P cores are going to just under 1.3 volts. E cores are only going to 1.15 volts. E cores locked at 4.9. We're at 4.6 all core for the P core. Can't really get 5.7. Did I say 4.6? I meant 5.6. Can't really get 5.7 to run in the time allotted, but I never really played around with Core Ultra overclocking, and it's different than 14th gen. Like, it's not the same. There's a lot of different nuances, and the DLVR is what's new too, and trying to figure out that. And then you also have pass-through voltage from VRM to Core as well. So it's, well, yes, that's how it works normally, but there's actually a setting in there where if you adjust that, it moves some of that voltage over to the core as well. So it's just learning an entirely new method of overclocking.
Yeah, it's like the lower you lower the voltage, the higher the clocks go.
I don't understand this. This is some voodoo shit right here.
3,000, there you go. At least you figure out which slider to slide in which direction.
It does not compute in my head to go lower on slider to go higher on your clocker. Okay, now that we've actually seen the full effects of undervolting an AMD GPU, and I know you guys have been screaming at the monitor for years, it's just so counterintuitive to my brain. Okay, I think we're good. A couple hours later on mine. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start with Cinebench. So 44,411 for me.
20,915.
So you came up from a 19,636 to a 20,915. You gained almost 1,300 points.
Nice.
And I am 18,048.
Okay, so you came up from a 17,562 So you gained 500 points.
Still getting something, which
Yeah.
is not bad for a CPU that really doesn't push itself much.
Yeah, but you know who I feel bad for is anyone still running a 2990WX Threadripper with their 30,000 score. All right, Geekbench. So our recent scores on Geekbench 6 yesterday. So we'll start with Nick. You're at a 14,882. Yesterday, or the other day, you had a 14,458. So you came up slightly. Okay, you're coming up slightly. Phil right now has a 15,622. And then I came up from a 22,413 to a 23,205. So not even 1,000 points, but again, that's just because of the averaging of the scores. I love how this video is no longer about how good did these systems overclock and what did they gain, and it's more about here are the weird nuances of overclocking. We'll show you guys real quick. So Nick lost a little score from his non-overclocked score of a 12,981, and he dropped down to a 12,800. Phil went up though. He went up from a 13,298 up to a 13,883. So you gained almost 600 points. Stock speeds, I had an 18,299, but overclocked is doing something weird. Watch. Starting FPS is 150, and it's ramping down, right? It showed 150 FPS at the start right there. But the result is not showing it. It's only like counting part of the run, which is really weird. Because look, Phil's is starting right there at 105. But see, I got a 17,747. I lost score, and it's only showing that I started at, this time it shows 123. Every time I run it, it shows a different number. So this is an example of how like overclocking in some applications doesn't reflect in a positive way. Whatever, I'll just call it what it is. It's just, that's one of the weird nuances of that test when it comes to CPU. Now is where it's gonna get interesting in the gaming section. I have a feeling we just kept the same gap. We just slid the bracket out.
Yeah,
farther.
everyone went up the same amount.
Oh, you beat him again.
Let's go!
All right, so now we're gonna go over to Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West. So I finished the Horizon testing, but what I want to talk about real quick is we off-camera Phil ran a test on his Threadripper on Time Spy CPU test and only got a 9,000 points.
Yeah, it was like 9736 or something.
Yeah, but then he ran Time Spy Extreme and he got, like for CPU test, and got a really good score. So we think the problem is with regular Time Spy, it becomes a point where the CPU becomes too fast for that test and it's almost like a time mapping problem. So kind of like how Cinebench R15 now, if you run on a modern CPU, it just runs so fast that every time you run it, you can have 10,000 point swings in every direction. So I think that's part of the problem. So we should have run Time Spy Extreme for this, but we wanted to see what the uplifts were, so we just left it as was. And it shows us in that test, it was actually a loss in performance for me, a gain for Phil, and a loss for Nick, which is really weird. Anyway, let's go ahead and now check our results here. Okay, so I have 127.95 average FPS. So I gained 3 FPS. Phil has a 126.14, and then Nick has a 129.23. So Nick's little overclock got him, back to first place there. All right, so F1, no idea what to expect here. We'll just start it together. 3, 2, 1.
You tripped the breaker on the power strip? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so I finished. I had to add 5 millivolts back. So asterisks on this one. But I came up from a 133 to a 144. That was a pretty big jump, actually. I matched Nick's system, but Phil's just took a commanding lead at 154 there. All right, well, here's what we'll do. We'll just get rid of the efficiency points entirely. So we'll remove 20 points from the total. We'll just carry over our disk speed points and our platform upgrade points, and let's see what happens with overclocking. Okay, so final tallies are here. Man, this was a huge jump for me overclocking wise. So I came in 3rd place in gaming with a total points of 57.4. I was 95.7% of the score of 1st place, which was actually Phil. So Phil went to 1st place in gaming, which is crazy. Yeah. That just means that your card, even though it didn't have the additional power limit that Nick's does, had to have been holding that boost clock longer for some reason. But Nick was in 2nd place at 97.8% of Phil's score. That's just total FPS added up, right? So Phil got 60 points, Nick got 58.7 points, and I got 57.4 points. Now in compute, this is where the overclock really pushed the score for you guys down because of my Cinebench alone. Because you guys saw barely any improvement, but I saw 4,000 points, no, 3,000 something points of improvement, right? No, I don't remember.
You saw a big jump, basically.
I saw a big jump. Phil was in second place at 59.1% of my score, and Nick was in third place with 53.6% of my score. So that means I got 50 points, Phil got 29.6 points of 50, and you got 26.8 points of 50. So that means now, because we omitted the CPU and GPU efficiency, that's total 20 points omitted from the score. Now we have a possible 145 points. Nick is in Phil's in third place with 113 points. Total.
Wow.
And that's gonna be because of the drive, I think.
Yeah.
Nick beat you by 1 point with 114.
Nice.
And I have 127.4.
Just gotta take it.
Because you improved in the gaming side quite a bit and a little bit in the GPU side. But unfortunately, the drive still pulled down just enough to where 1 point. Like, if you could have just gotten like one more FPS somewhere else, it might have.
Yeah. Like 300 megahertz. Or
But
like,
you had it. But honestly, your F1 score really lifted that for you. So.
That was a surprising win. I did not expect the regular CPU with the same GPU to beat the X3D one.
Because the X3D really only shines when it's a CPU bottleneck.
Yeah.
And you're not CPU bottlenecking with the 5070 Ti.
In fact, like pretty much none of these tests were X3D, like the X3D could not stretch its legs for any of these tests.
But it can in esports, and we're gonna show you that right now. Okay, so we're in CS2 in esports mode. Low settings, 1080p. You can see right here, I'm getting about a little under 600 FPS, bounces around. My 1% lows are in the 250s to low 260s, okay? With a faster CPU, as we know. But if we come over here, where they're both on 5070 Ti's, I'm on 9070 XT, obviously. Phil is in the 730s with a 280 FPS, 1% lows. But Nick is essentially the same GPU with the next 3D CPU getting over 800 FPS with 300 and what?
54.
354 1% lows. So that's where the X3D really shines, especially when it comes to esports stuff. But I'm just saying those gaps, right? It's crazy to see almost 70, 80 FPS difference, but 100 FPS on the 1% lows. Mine probably crashed too by this point. Nope. Okay, so anyway, we're gonna get out of here. Let us know what titles you think we should look at when it comes to esports testing, because honestly, we don't know.
And what settings do you guys actually prefer to play on? Because
and how many millimeters should my nose be from the screen?
And how diagonal should your keyboard be?
Yeah, like this.
Yeah.
It's just inverted.
We just fully inverted. We just joke, but we're also genuinely.
We're not laughing with you, we're laughing at you. But we still want to test it all, okay? All right.
It's so different from what we normally test, which is weird graphics now.
My gaming position is legs up on the desk with a wireless keyboard and, and mouse.
And ultra graphics. So yeah.
Because I don't care about graphics are important to me. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We're gonna get out of here. His system borked again, it seems like. But again, these GPU overclocks were on the ragged edge.
Yep.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. That's it for these. Don't know what we're gonna do with them next, but
I mean, that'll definitely be an esports rig.
That one, yes, not these, but
yeah.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.